Bonjour Yannick, bonjour à tous. Alors merci, vous pouvez rejoindre nous pour cette séance de la PNQ. À mes côtés, Jagdish Joypal, bonjour.
Bonjour Priscilla, Yanis, bonjour, auditeur également, bonjour.
NPNQ, Jagdish, axé sur le tourisme. Xavier Duval qui questionne Premier ministre, vice-premier ministre et ministre du Tourisme Steven Obigadou. Xavier Duval peut envie connaître qui fait le nombre d'arrivées touristiques pour l'année financière 2022-2023 inférieur à la prévision 1,4 million qui est annoncé dans le dernier budget. Bizarre rappel qui, dans une conférence de presse mercredi dernier, Steven Obigadou dit qu'il pour mettre plus l'accent sur les recettes touristiques et non pas le nombre d'arrivées. Et il voulait atteindre le même niveau recettes qui pays qui enregistré en 2019 avant Covid-19, soit 1,7 milliard de dollars, environ 77 milliards roupies. Donc, Jack DJ Paul, qui comparaison Xavier Duval peut ou les faire dans la prévision touristique.
Xavier Duval peut mettre l'accent surtout sur le nombre de touristes qui séjournent à Maurice en 2022. Alors, il pouvait faire une comparaison entre l'année, c'est-à-dire les années précédentes, l'année avant, parce que l'évolution du secteur touristique est marquée par la crise sanitaire COVID-19. Par exemple, nous constatons qu'en 2019, il y a 1 383 000 touristes. C'est un petit peu une évolution très rapide, constante, et un certain record même, nous capables de dire. Mais il est baissé drastiquement en 2020 à 308 980 et encore plus en 2021 quand frontières étaient fermées, donc 178 780 l'arrivée. Alors là, Steven Obigadou, le vice-premier ministre et ministre du Tourisme par ici là, il peut mettre l'accent beaucoup plus, comment dire, alors fait que là, il peut mettre l'accent pas tout à fait sur la baisse du nombre d'arrivées, mais surtout pour montrer c'est-à-dire les revenus, les recettes touristiques, ils sont stabilisés et ils restent plus ou moins les mêmes comparé avec 2019, c'est-à-dire 77 milliards de roupies. Et aussi, Steve Obigadou, pour les montrer que le nombre de touristes passe beaucoup plus de jours à Maurice qui était avant donc la COVID-19, question qui concerne donc toute cette évolution-là et qui vous donne l'occasion au ministre de s'expliquer et aussi pour Xavier Duval essayer d'acculer le gouvernement qui fait une promesse dans le dernier budget pour 1,4 million de touristes et nous pas fin atteindre un tel objectif.
Alors sinon, lors de la PMQT, Jagdish, l'opposition qui peut revenir à la charge lors bail qui finit octroyé à Eco Dia Park dans la région Grand Bassin. Deux questions peuvent retenir l'attention. D'abord, celle de Patrick Assiavaden, mais aussi d'Eshan Juman.
Oui, alors 11 sur 11 questions qui sont adressées au Premier ministre et il y en a deux qu'il y en a pour répondre et s'il n'est pas capable de répondre dans le temps alloué et qui concerne la question la plus importante de Patrick Assiavaden. Et là, vous pensez qu'il faut possiblement Xavier Duval, il laisse le terrain libre, il pas venir avec un private notice question sur la question comment décider, il pourrait venir à la charge, c'est-à-dire la semaine dernière, pour permettre au Premier ministre et Patrick Assiavaden, donc, pose question pendant une trentaine de minutes sur toute cette affaire de Eco Deer Park Association qui fait bénéficier un terrain du gouvernement, un terrain à bail. Et là, Patrick Assiavaden, qui député de la circonscription numéro 15, peut demander au Premier ministre s'il compte instituer une commission d'enquête pour étudier une irrégularité dans l'allocation et ce qui finit dans l'activité illégale sur le terrain. Bénéficiaire le bénéficiaire il fin impliqué dans le trafic de drogue. Alors autant de questions et aussi donc l'autre Essan Juman, l'autre député qui pose également une question sur cette affaire qui continue donc retenir l'attention de l'opinion publique.
Et côté ambiance, Jagdish, donc Orvin Boulel qui de retour à l'Assemblée nationale après le gel de sa suspension en Cour suprême vendredi, alors que Paul Béranger, le leader du MMM, Sotifi Johanna Béranger et que Rajesh Bhagwan toujours suspendus.
Oui, deux députés de l'opposition, donc trois députés de l'opposition, et surtout un petit peu le frontbench du MMM, Paul Béranger, Rajesh Bhagwan, et en repli, Ena Johanna Béranger. Alors là, c'est le comportement du speaker, procédure parlement, qui peut retenir beaucoup plus l'attention. Arvin Boulel fin faire appel, il dépose une injonction en Cour suprême, et la Cour fin donne raison à Arvin Boulel pour les retrouver sur place, surtout après qu'il ait deux avocats du speaker et du premier ministre. Il ne disent pas, il n'a aucune objection pour que la suspension contre Arvin Boulel soit levée.
Alors, nous rappelle aussi qu'il y a deux projets de loi à l'agenda, le Waste Management and Resource Recovery Bill et le Mauritius Digital Promotion Agency Bill. Nous parlons tout de suite en direction de l'Assemblée nationale.
Announcements none. Papers have been laid. Questions?
Speaker, my question is addressed to the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Housing and Land Use Planning, Minister of Tourism. Welcome, Arvin. And it reads as follows. Whether in regard to tourist arrivals, he will state if the forecast number of 1.4 million for financial year 2022-2023, as announced in the budget speech, is expected to be reached, and if so, give details thereof, and if not, indicate the reasons therefore.
Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I shall remove my mask. May I bid the Leader of the Opposition good morning and thank him for providing me the opportunity to offer to the House all the information I hold in my possession concerning an important matter in the course of what I hope to be a courteous exchange. Mr. Speaker, sir, since 2022, world tourism and Mauritian tourism, of course, have been living in the shadow of the COVID-19 pandemic that has so far, let us recall, claimed more than 6.9 million lives worldwide, including around 1,000 Mauritian lives. Now, prior to the pandemic, tourism, as we all know, accounted for a direct contribution of 8% to GDP, and direct and indirect around 24%, accounting for the fact that some 100,000 households derived income directly or indirectly from travel and tourism. Tourism earnings prior to COVID-19 stood at around 63 million rupees. Now, let us look at the figures of tourist arrivals prior to COVID. Calendar year 2018, we had 1,399,000 tourists, nearly 1.4 million. For the fiscal year 2018-2019, 1.4 million. And calendar year 2019, 1,383,000. So slightly below 1.4 million. Now, COVID-19 brought world tourism to a standstill, with initially what were travel restrictions turning into travel bans, closure of airspace and then of borders. And as a result, the world faced its deepest recession since the 1930s. And it led to a profound crisis for both the airline and cruise ship industries, leading to closures, downsizing, and redundancies. As regards the travel and tourism sector, This translated into closure of hotels and restaurants, tourism-based enterprises, massive redundancies impacting both the most developed and the poorest countries around the world. Now, in Mauritius, let us recall, borders were closed from 20th March 2020 to 14th July 2021, nearly a year and a half. And we experienced 2 lockdowns at national level, followed by a period of gradual lifting of restrictions between 15th July to 30th September 2021. Now, as a result, for fiscal year 2019-2020, the number of tourist arrivals stood at 1,038,000, approximately 1 million, because we lost only the last quarter of 2021. For calendar year 2020, 309,000 tourists. And for the fiscal year 2020 to 2021, a paltry 7,300 tourists. The worst performance since ever.
Time is going by. We are still in 2020. I was hoping the minister would tell us something we don't already know. Please tell us about the reasons for this year, Deputy Prime Minister. We're not interested in things we already know. When the lockdown was, what happened, this is already known. There was no point in asking you a question if that was the answer.
Mr. Speaker, the House will surely agree that the question is the leader of the opposition's to frame as he thinks fit. And the answer, Mr. Speaker, under your guidance, is mine, to respond fully and comprehensively to the PNQ put to me, and that is what I propose to do. Now, in Mauritius, I said 2020-2021, 7,300 tourists. I wish to recall, Mr. Speaker, that we saved the population of Mauritius. In the thick of COVID, we saved the population under the guidance of the Prime Minister and the Minister of Health through vaccination, thereby creating the possibility of an early and safe reopening of borders. By the time we reopened, in October 2021, 86% of our population had been vaccinated once, 80% twice, and we had started the booster vaccination. Exceptional worldwide. And this is a performance that has been acknowledged and recognized both by the World Health Organization and the World Bank. We have not only saved the population, but we have saved Mauritian tourism. Had government not acted then, the inevitable consequence would have been closure of many hotels and tourism enterprises with massive loss of employment and livelihoods. Government spent, Mr. Speaker, 12.3 billion rupees in terms of wage assistance scheme. And it's relevant because had we not done that, we would not have been speaking of 1.4 million. We would be speaking of 50,000 tourists. 12.3 billion wage assistance scheme to hotels, tourist residences, restaurants, tour operators, and all employers and employees of the tourism sector. Waiver of state land rental and related support measures. Direct support to the hotel industry through the MIC to the tune of some 15 billion rupees. And the self-employed assistance scheme for taxi operators, skippers, and pleasure craft operators, amongst others, 354 million to safeguard livelihoods. When I say we saved Mauritian tourism, of course it's not just government. It's also the hotels, the restaurants, and employers who use this time for refurbishment, retraining, and greening, and strategizing for the relaunch of the sector. And also, let me pay homage to all the employees and independent operators of the tourism sector who, through huge sacrifices for themselves and their families, demonstrated admirable resilience and willingness to support tourism. Now, as from October 2021, we began the slow and complex process of building back and of building back better. Why do I say slow? Because the global recovery has been a very gradual process with twists and turns. Today, we live in a world of uncertainty, and this has affected travelers and the travel industry generally. Why do I say complex? Because of this uncertainty. The world has changed. Collectively, we have experienced the most traumatic psychological upset since World War II. How does this impact on the health of travelers and on the willingness to travel? And why do I say building back better? Because we cannot have more of the same. The risk of future pandemics is real. Disruptions in the global value chains, the capacity of travel, the travel industry to respond. So since October 2021, recovery has been slow and complex. In the fiscal year 2021, we had only 180,000 tourists, 12.8% recovery. In fiscal year 2021-2022, 553,000 tourists, 39% recovery comparing to the corresponding year pre-COVID. That is when, in the course of the budget speech, the Minister of Finance, my colleague and good friend, spoke of the objective of achieving 1.4, nearly 1.4 million tourists, referring to that pre-pandemic figure, and the objective referred to this present fiscal year. For recall, we had achieved 1,383,000 immediately before COVID. So 1.4 million is indeed the target for the present financial year. I have always said two things. Firstly, that it is a very ambitious target. We have never hid the fact that it is a very ambitious target. Ever since June 2022, that is what we had said. It was then very ambitious. Remember, at the moment the Minister of Finance spoke, for fiscal year 2021-2022, we had 553,000 tourists, representing a recovery rate of 39%. It was, on the one hand, very ambitious, it still is, and it will remain a very ambitious target. On the other hand, a target, to my mind, is not an accounting exercise. It is the definition of a common goal to mobilize all the energy, all the resources, all the goodwill of the whole population, of the whole tourism sector, to strive towards the future, confident with a clear perspective of where we're heading. And it was in that spirit that we created the joint working group with the private sector to strategize as to reopening and how we would relaunch tourism. Now, since the last budget speech, what has been the progress we've made? From 553,000 in fiscal year 2021-2022, for calendar year 2022, we achieved more than 997,000 tourists, a recovery rate of 72%, from 39% fiscal year to 72% in the calendar year. And in the first quarter of 2023, we have welcomed more than 305,000 tourists. The recovery rate for this first quarter of 2023 stands at 87%. So for the whole of the fiscal year, we have so far welcomed 926,000 tourists, recovery rate of 84%. Now, when I say 1.4 million is and remains a very ambitious target, why do I say that? Because, first of all, the pace of recovery is uncertain. Who can tell me what will be the course of events in Ukraine? Who can say for certain what will be global inflation in our global and in our main markets? who can say how this will psychologically impact on tourists? Will the phenomenon of revenge traveling remain a constant for the future, or will it change? This is all uncertain. And the challenges now, and that is why I say recovery is complex, is on the one hand, the demand, generating the demand. Over the last 3 months, in our main markets, France, the UK, Réunion, we're at 100% recovery. In Germany, we're at more than 90% recovery. In South Africa has got its own peculiarities, we are at 86% recovery. In India, unfortunately, because India only opened less than a year ago, reopened, we stand at 48% recovery for the last 3 months. China has only just reopened, and we had to wait for the second list of countries for tourist exchanges for Mauritius to appear there. So the first major challenge is that of demand. Consolidating, recovering our position within the main markets, and generating additional demand from the opportunity markets that are India and the Gulf countries, first and foremost. Now, the second major challenge of the demand is connectivity. The Leader of the Opposition will be interested to know that number of airlines serving Mauritius. In 2019, between January and March, we had 22 airlines. This year, first quarter, 18 to 19 airlines. Number of destinations from which tourists can come to Mauritius. In 2019, 31 to 32 destinations or ports of embarkation prior to COVID. Today, between 25 and 26. Number of flights, we had between, let's say, an average of 800 flights prior to COVID. Today, our average would turn around 600, and believe. I have the figures per month. Unfortunately, I do not have the total average for the first quarter. In terms of total seat capacity, very important. In 2019, first quarter, 686,000 seats. And in 2023, 558,000 seats. So there are real constraints and challenges, but our recovery in terms of seat capacity stands at 81%. So we're doing very well as Air Mauritius builds back capacity and we connect with other airlines. Now, one of the major challenges for the Leader of the Opposition to understand is cruise tourism. The cruise ship industry has not recovered. From memory, I think the recovery rate stands around 22 to 23%. And that is, of course, impacting us. And one of the reasons is that the one major operator is no longer operating in our region, and we don't have the cruise ships that we had prior to COVID. But, and I will end on that, I would like to put it to the House that what matters most. Yes, we have this highly ambitious target of 1.4 million, and we will spare no effort to get as close as possible to 1.4 million. But what is most important, and I'm sure the Leader of the Opposition will agree, is tourism earnings. And in terms of tourism earnings, we are doing better than in terms of recovery of actual tourists. The percentage change, 2019 to 2022, in terms of tourist arrivals, we have 28% less tourists. But as regards tourism earnings, we are only at 17% less, which means that we are doing much better in terms of tourism earnings, with a total of nearly $1.5 billion US dollars for 2022. and that is accounted for by a longer period of stay. Tourism stay, on average, has increased, and tourism spend per tourist has increased. So as we move forward, Mr. Speaker, we are mobilizing all the resources that we have at hand, working hand in hand with the public sector to bring about the best possible results for the tourism industry in the present fiscal year.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister has taken, nearly 20 minutes. I hope you'll give me adequate time to ask the questions, and I hope he will have the decency to reply short answers and precise answers, because this is what the nation expects from a Deputy Prime Minister. The first thing I'd like to ask the Deputy Prime Minister is this. You're talking about recovery rate. We would have recovered 100% if we were to 1.4 million tourists. We are at 87%. Maldives is at 108% in the first 3 months of this year. Seychelles, you will be shocked to learn, Deputy Prime Minister, is at 132% of recovery, meaning that it has 32% more tourists in the first 3 months of 2023 than it had in 2019. Now, we used to be the market leader by far in the Indian Ocean, and now we are into third place. And my question is, why is Seychelles doing better? Why is Maldives doing much better? And why we are the last horse in a three-course race?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to first point out that neither the Seychelles nor the Maldives closed down for as long as we did during the COVID period. And let me just quote one figure for the House to understand why we chose to close our borders. According to the WHO, total number of COVID cases per 100,000 population. Seychelles, 46,505. Mauritius, 3,161. Deaths per 100,000 population. What can be more important than safeguarding the lives of Mauritians? And that was the choice of our Prime Minister and of government. Deaths per 100,000, Seychelles, 170, Mauritius, 80, less than half percentage-wise. That is first and foremost the very first reason, because we chose to close our borders and protect our population until we achieved a high level of vaccination. Now, the Maldives hardly closed, and they reopened fully in July 2020. Seychelles reopened to tourism after closing a much shorter period than Mauritius in March 2021. We reopened in October 2021. So the answer is very clear, Mr. Speaker. We made the choice, and I believe it was the right choice, to protect our population so that when we reopen our borders, we would do so safely and we would allow tourism to flourish in proper conditions.
Speaker, we opened 18 months ago. And when you quote the figures of the Ministry of Health, we all know they were falsified and erroneous. It can be proven at any time by looking at the deaths in 2022, 2021 compared to the average. It can be proven. I'm sorry about that. Now, I want to quote one. I mean, now it is COVID. In his press conference, he said, en raison du mauvais temps qui a prévalu en février. Now, I looked at the meteo report for February. It was one of the driest months for the last 30 years. So what is the real reason? En raison du mauvais temps, because COVID 18 months ago or because simply the ministry is not competent enough to run the tourism industry in Mauritius?
Mr. Speaker, first and foremost, I take, on behalf of government, strong objection. I did not interrupt the leader of the opposition. He speaks of decency, and I would request that he be decent enough to listen, just as I listened to him politely. Mr. Speaker, we take strong objection to the accusation that figures would have been falsified. These figures have been vetted and are being used by the World Health Organization. They have been considered both by the World Bank and the IMF and are being used internationally. There are, within international society, clear procedures for collection of data at national level and compilation at international level that are used by international bodies. Unfortunately, this leader of the opposition and this opposition as a whole have spent the whole COVID period casting doubt at closing and or reopening borders, casting doubt at vaccination, casting doubt at the whole effort of my colleagues of the Ministry of Health. And that is indeed shameful, Mr. Speaker. Likewise, in terms of public spending to protect the population, to protect the economy, this has been acknowledged worldwide by everybody, save for this opposition. So, Mr. Speaker, the figures speak for themselves. We have one of the best performances in terms of affording protection to our population, and we are very, very proud of that, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, secondly, as regards February. Now, what I said in the course of my press conference was that in the specific case of South Africa, nous avions noté une progression en dents de scie. Une progression, certes, mais de janvier à mars, nous avions fait 96% de récupération au mois de janvier, 84% de taux de récupération sur le marché sud-africain au mois de février. Donc j'ai posé la question, pourquoi? J'ai interrogé mes collègues de la NTPA, j'ai interrogé des spécialistes du domaine, des hôteliers, des opérateurs, et ils m'ont parlé du cyclone Freddy. Le cyclone Freddy, nous le savons tous, qui a eu la plus longue durée dans toute l'histoire des cyclones, qui s'est renforcé, je crois, 6 fois, qui a traversé tout l'océan Indien. Et toute cette période de mauvais temps associée à Freddy a coïncidé avec la Saint-Valentin, et donc nous avons eu des annulations de dernière minute. Et donc c'est pour cela que j'ai fait référence, en ce qui concerne le mois de février, au marché sud-africain et le mauvais temps ayant prévalu.
Speaker, I'm sad that something as important than that, it's as if I'm asking a PNQ to the Minister of Health. Very disappointing, I must tell you quite frankly. Now, I'm going to come to this weird issue. The Deputy Prime Minister thinks that revenue has in fact increased per tourist compared to 2019. He's forgetting inflation. Not inflation in Mauritius, inflation in the dollar zone because he quoted dollars. Inflation is in the dollar zone. 2019 to 2022 is nearly 20%. So whatever you are saying is total rubbish. In that, firstly, what we can say for sure.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition, please remove that.
Totally wrong. It's totally wrong.
Withdraw that word.
Rubbish I withdraw. Totally wrong. Totally 100%, 1000% wrong. Because the figures, not only the quantity is less, much less, the recovery rate than our competitors, but also revenue per tourist is less in real terms. And I hope you understand the difference between real terms and nominal terms. It's not the same at all. One iPhone was worth $900 in 2019. It's $1,200 today. The value of the purchasing power goes down. Don't come and tell things that are completely wrong.
Mr. Speaker,
Not to say.
I will not, as the Leader of the Opposition used, say that what he has said is rubbish. I have too much respect for the traditions of parliamentary debate in our House than to use such terms. And may I assure him that I know fully well what impact inflation has and what it means in terms of reality. Now, nonetheless, the figures are the figures. And the Leader of the Opposition, if instead of giggling, he would have the courtesy of listening, I could say that he is 10,000 times, 100,000 times, 1 billion times wrong, likewise. The figures are clear. 2019 to 2022, my point was, the percentage drop in tourism earnings is less than the percentage drop in tourist arrivals. And likewise, in terms of earnings per tourist, we've heard more. So a comparison, and let me say this again. Comparison January to December 2019. We have 28% less tourists. But tourism earnings have been reduced by only 17%, and the earnings per tourist have in fact increased by 16%. And I deliberately expressed the figures in US dollars as opposed to Mauritian rupees.
The Deputy Prime Minister doesn't understand that there's inflation in dollar terms also, not just in Mauritian terms. Maybe that is something for you to find out after this PNQ. I want to now come to the budgets, Mr. Speaker. Now, once upon a time, 5-6 years ago, the MTPA was enjoying a budget of maybe 14 million euros. Now, in real terms, this year, it will get, in nominal terms, 8 million euros, but in real terms, counting inflation, which I'm sure the MTPA will tell you all about, it's about 6 million. So the MTPA has half the budget that it used to have, and that is a fact. 1,000% right. That is a fact. Now, where is the money going? Because the money is being spent. The taxpayer is spending the money. It's spending the money, 130 million rupees, coming to 400 million rupees, on Liverpool, probably useless, and 300 million or so or more on film rebate scheme. That is where the money is going instead of going to your ministry for promotion. So I'm trying to help you here. Your ministry has been squeezed completely of funds, half of what it used to get for promotion, and that is the reason why tourism is less. That is the reason, plus the fact the country is so dirty, plus the fact there's hardly any nightlife, plus the fact that during COVID, instead of improving the destination, amenities, hotel renovation, etc., you sat on your hands and did nothing. These are the reasons why today we are stuck in tourism. That is the real reason.
Mr. Speaker, first let me clarify one thing. On this side of the House, we are a team. We operate as a team. So when the Leader of the Opposition says he's ashamed that he's asked me a question, it's as if a question to the Minister of Health. Well, we are a team. And the language we speak is the same language. It is the language of truth, whether expressed by the Prime Minister, my colleague of Health, my colleague of Finance, or myself. We speak and we act as a team. I know it might be difficult for the opposition, with all its divisions, to understand that, but we act as a team. Now, secondly, I would pray once again that, you know, the Leader of the Opposition, I understand the President designate of the Labour Party-led alliance, should show some respect and courtesy in the House. It is as if he's the only one who understands economics, who understands inflation, as if nobody else understands that inflation is also expressed in dollar terms. But that is the reality the whole world round. For the Seychelles, for the Maldives, for Réunion, for South Africa, that is the reality. And we can't escape that. Now, as regards the MTPA, let me come back to the point of working as a team. My duty as Minister of Tourism is to ensure that every cent of public money is properly spent. With the MTPA, we are working to ensure that the whole marketing strategy is constantly being updated, is dynamic, as following the trend of each particular market. And the leader of the opposition, I believe, was once a Minister of Tourism. He should understand that. When I speak of opportunity markets, it means a new strategy as regards India, as regards the Gulf states, and in the near future as regards China. Whatever budget the MTPA has is closely followed by the Ministry of Tourism and by my colleagues of finance. Whenever and wherever there is a need expressed by the MTPA through the Ministry of Tourism for additional funding, we have had no issues, I may assure the leader of the opposition. Funding will follow the marketing strategy to guarantee optimal use of public funds in the interests of an effective marketing, tourism marketing.
Time over by 5 minutes. Prime Minister's question time.
B210.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the House will recall that in his reply to the private notice question from the Leader of the Opposition on Tuesday, 11th of April 2023, the Attorney General and Minister of Agro-Industry and Foods detailed information and clarifications.
Et voilà donc pour cette PNQ de Xavier Duval adressée au ministre du Tourisme, Stephen Obigadou. Alors, Stephen Obigadou qui d'abord fin la situation Covid qui fin immobilise le secteur, l'idée qui fin amène la plus pire récession. Et les dire finina ben fermeture de ben frontières, de ben l'hôtel, de ben restaurant. Les dire Maurice finina deux lockdowns et finina une reprise graduelle pendant Covid-19. Les dire que le gouvernement fin capable sauve la population avec la vaccination, avec booster dose. L'idée aussi qui fin aussi sape le secteur du tourisme. Alors, les fin évoque aussi le Wage Assistance Scheme, 12,3 millions de roupies. Et l'idée à partir de octobre 2021, Stephen Obigadou dit qu'il fin une reprise lente, graduelle, complexe, avec des hauts et des bas. Alors, l'idée qu'il y a encore les autres risques de pandémie. Les fins revient l'objectif ministère Finances, donc pour atteindre 1,4 million de touristes. L'idée que c'était un objectif, et c'est toujours un objectif qui est très, très ambitieux pour l'année 2021-2022. L'idée, donc, qui finira, donc, une reprise, il finit une reprise de 39%. Et donc, pardon, les fins reviennent la mise en place du Joint Working Group, une reprise de 72%, donc 72% pour 2022 avec 997 000 touristes. Alors, l'idée récupération, l'urban marché principaux, comme la France, l'Angleterre, il y a 100%. Alors, Stephen Obigadou qui finit de dire, par contre, récupération pour touristes, arrivées touristiques par bateau croisière. Donc, il n'y a pas autant, entre 20 et 23%. Alors, Xavier Duval pose une question. Il dit comment se fait-il qu'un pays comme Seychelles, comme Maldives, atteignent une récupération de 132% et qui Maurice, il y a à la 3e place. Et donc, l'idée qu'alors que Maurice est habitué leader dans ce secteur-là.
Dans la région.
Dans la région. Et donc, Steven Obigadou fin mettre de l'avant le fait que Seychelles et que Maldives pas fin connaissent même situation que nous et il fin dresse un parallèle avec la situation donc là-bas dans ces deux pays-là et il dit que le nombre de morts les plus comparé à Maurice. Xavier Duval fin dire que selon lui ben chiffre fin falsifié c'est que Steven Obigadou fin nier il fin appuyer le ben chiffre de l'organisation internationale. Et puis, Xavier Duval, pas fin d'accord, donc, qui est revenu, donc recette plutôt par touristes augmenté, il fin appuie notamment leur pouvoir d'achat, inflation, Jack DJ Paul, donc un PNQ très chiffré.
Très chiffré parce qu'il concerne les statistiques et évolution dans le secteur touristique avant Covid, pendant la Covid, et après, à partir de maintenant, qui frontières inouvertes. Alors donc 2018-2019, fin l'année et l'année vraiment prospère pour le secteur touristique. 2018 nous fait 1 399 000 touristes. En 2019, 1 400 000. Alors là, il est très favorable. Et Xavier Duval, sur question, qui basé, qui faire aujourd'hui qu'en frontière inouverte après 18 mois, nous retrouvons avec une baisse dans le nombre de touristes. C'est-à-dire, nous pas atteindre le 1,4 million de touristes qui finissent annoncé, qui finissent défini comme un objectif. Et là, où d'ailleurs, on rappelle, Steven Obigadou peut dire que c'était un target, c'était un objectif. Surtout, et c'est un exercice pour mobiliser la population, mobilise tout ban décideur dans le secteur touristique. Donc, atteindre un objectif, c'est vise très haut, même si nous pas encore atteint les reconnaître, mais seulement de dire c'est-à-dire sa mobilisation de l'esprit de création dans le secteur touristique. Alors, les besoins continuent et c'est là que il fait instituer un working group pour continuer travail dans la bonne direction. Ensuite, concernant la région, c'est vrai. Alors là, Xavier Duval voulait accueillir le ministre du Tourisme, alors, et Seychelles et les Maldives qui peut prendre le devant, donc dévance nous sur le plan touristique et avec raison d'ailleurs, et Steven Obigadou peut dire, je ne ferme les frontières aussi longtemps, pendant une courte période Maldives fermée, les Seychelles également, et après je nous ouvert rapidement et je finis un moyen de connectivité, c'est-à-dire avion finale vini, capable d'amener des touristes, ce qui expliquait qu'ils ont fait mieux que Maurice. Alors le recovery, c'est-à-dire la reprise, les 100% et du côté de la France, l'Angleterre, la Réunion, et côté de l'Allemagne, il y a encore 90%, l'Afrique du Sud, 86%, et là, finalement, une question de Xavier Duval, comment l'Afrique du Sud, il peut tasser un petit peu, il n'est pas très stable, et dans le mois de février, d'après Steven Obigadou, c'est la présence du cyclone Freddy dans la région, alors pendant une longue période, qui finit faire, qui le mois de février, finit une baisse dans le nombre d'arrivées du côté des touristes sud-africains. Maintenant, la connectivité concernant l'avion, le déplacement et le service aérien qui est disponible pour la région. Alors, le ministre du Tourisme, Steven Obigadou, peut dire en 2019, il y a 22 compagnies aériennes qui peuvent desservir Maurice. En 2023, l'IN baissé, 18 à 19. En 2019, il y a 31 à 32 destinations qui Maurice peut compter. Et aujourd'hui, nous en avons 25 à 26. Donc, tout ça fait partie qui nous besoin continuer et opérer, continuer, guetter comment nous pouvons aller plus devant. Ensuite, une cause le nombre de flights, 800. Donc, avant la COVID, et aujourd'hui, il y en a seulement 600. Et Maurice espérait prendre et espérer que donc nous pour capables arrive à nos capacités de transport le plus grand nombre de touristes par voie aérienne. Croisière, les malheureux, Xavier Duval, quand il était ministre du Tourisme, également le ministre des Finances, ancien ministre des Finances, Vishnu Lathiparaidou, qui met beaucoup l'accent sur un port pour une croisière. Et là, les fins tombent à 20 à 23%. alors qui croisière, il peut continuer, développer dans le monde. La raison, c'est qu'il y a un opérateur de croisière, il arrête son activité, l'eau Maurice. Donc, c'est là que le comité qui finit institué pour bien revoir qui bonne disposition peut prendre. Et concernant la fermeture, et là, l'exposé de Stephen Obigadou, il finit dire que Maurice est privilégié la vie des bandes mauriciens, la vie des bandes citoyens, au lieu de get aspect et de revenus touristiques, get la richesse. Alors, c'était une période difficile, mais quand même, et là, il fait une comparaison, le nombre de victimes du Covid à Maurice est inférieur comparé avec celles qui, d'ailleurs, peut dévancer nous sur ce plan. Voilà comment, donc, oui, très chiffré, beaucoup de chiffres. Et en même temps, Xavier Duval pose une question, la promotion touristique, c'est-à-dire nous payer le budget de la MTPA, Mauritius Tourism Promotion Authority, il est en baisse, il nous donne 400 millions de roupies pour Liverpool, alors qu'ici, pour la promotion touristique, finit à une baisse constante et nous peut privilégier, par exemple, le film rebate scheme, également, donc, nous peut squeeze, d'après lui, nous peut diminuer une compression des bandes de fonds qui, et MTPA, généralement, bien bénéficier pour la promotion, mais Stephen Obigadou pas d'accord, il dit que tout bandes de fonds peut utiliser c'est-à-dire de manière efficiente et efficace pour continuer à promouvoir le secteur touristique.
Alors, côté ambiance, Jack Dish, nous avons remarqué que le député travailliste Arvin Boulel, aussitôt qu'il fait son retour au sein de l'hémicycle, il finit chaudement applaudi par les membres de l'opposition.
Il finit fait l'entrée dans le Parlement à 11h32, donc 2 minutes après la reprise, le speaker n'est pas fini gagner l'occasion peut-être pour accueillir lui, donc tranquillement accueilli par les membres du Parlement. Nous ne connaissons pas si du côté du gouvernement finit un applaudissement, mais c'est surtout du côté de l'opposition. Alors, Arvin Boulel finit connaît une longue suspension depuis novembre 2022. Ensuite, il fait sur l'entrée mardi dernier et il finit suspendre pour 2 séances parce que le speaker Thierry Prosli, il finit faire une déclaration pour atteinte à sa réputation en public, la radio. Et là, quand Arvin Boulel lose une plainte, une injonction en Cour suprême, les avocats de bonnes parties concernées, donc ils disent une objection. Mais là, Arvin Boulel, pour bizarre, dépose une plainte constitutionnelle et avant le 25 avril pour qu'il y ait un débat sur sa question de suspension.
Alors, en ce moment même, la tranche de la PMQT, donc qui est au menu, le bail qui est octroyé à The Eco Deer Park dans la région de Grand Bassin, qui est au menu de cette Prime Minister's Question Time. En ce moment même, c'est Patrick Assiavaden qui peut poser ses questions au Premier ministre. Vous êtes capable de suivre ça en direct, donc, sur nos pages Facebook défimedia.info. En tout cas, merci pour ce compte rendu, Jagdish Doypol de la PNQ.
Merci également à vous, Priscilla. Donc, l'occasion surtout pour nous comprendre ce qui peut passer dans le secteur touristique.
Merci beaucoup. Donc, c'est ici que nous prend congé de vous. À suivre de larges extraits de la PNQ et de la PMQT dans notre édition de 13h. À très bientôt.